Hello again, everybody. Well, that was an interesting year, wasn't it? First of all, the stock market did way better than just about anyone expected. We finally got through an election. Thank goodness. I think all of you are happy that that is over. Just to kind of recap, as if you needed one, we had the incumbent Democrat, one term, see you later. American voters said, we like the Make America Great guy coming in, of course. Part of the reason that we saw that change, of course, was the economy, inflation going up and hitting a 4-decade high, and then some of the increased tensions globally around the world. And then I think I messed up. Oh, that's embarrassing. I don't think I even told you what year I'm talking about. I'm sorry, did you think I was talking about 2024? Yeah, my bad. I was talking about 1980.
How does anyone find that funny?
Yeah, I know, they don't.
I mean, seriously, how does anyone find that funny?
Sorry about that. I'm not a comedian. I'll leave that to the professionals. I will stay in my lane. But there's a reason why I'm trying to be silly here, and it's a serious one, and here's the point. What we saw in 1980 similarly happened in 2024. I'm going to lay out that case. Why do we need to look at that? Because the trends show that we could see a repeat as 80 turned into 81, 2024 turning into 25. You better understand how they are comparable, because I think what a lot of folks are expecting to happen in the financial markets, the opposite might happen. It's the same thing that happened when the calendar turned from 80 to 81. So stay with me on this. We're going to take a little bit of a history ride and then bring it full circle to today. And we'll look at the possibilities of what may occur this time around and how that could impact your own portfolio. So first of all, the history lesson. I think a lot of you would be surprised to know that in Jimmy Carter's 4 years, the stock market actually did very, very well. Does that surprise you? I think it does, because the economy was not doing that great, as we all know. Inflation was going up, the unemployment rate was going up. But here, take a look at this chart here. That's the stock market, the return of the S&P 500 for those 4 years of Jimmy Carter's tenure, his 4-year term. Now, you can see in the first year in 1977, yes, the S&P did finish down about 7%. But look at those 3 years after that, progressively got better, with that final year that's capped out close to 32% of a return in the S&P 500. I think that surprises a lot of people, doesn't it? Well, now let's compare it to what we just went through in 2024. And in fact, all 4 years of Biden's term. 3 of the 4 years under Biden were also higher. And it was capped off by 2 really strong years in a row in 23 and 24. Both years, the S&P finished higher than 20%. I'm wondering if people 40, 50 years from now might look back and go, oh yeah, there was that Joe Biden. I've heard of him. Yeah, the economy wasn't doing that great, and there was inflation and all this. I'm sure the stock market did very, very poorly, when the facts show otherwise. It's the same thing in the late 70s. Today, if people tell you, well, did you know the stock market actually did very well in the late 70s? I think a lot of people would be surprised. Now, I'm going to show another chart here in just a second. And what you're going to see is that transition from 80 to 81. And that's the catch. That's the turn we need to pay attention to and see if the same thing is happening now. So I talked about 1980 being a really, really strong year. Here's the chart. You can see it got off to a little bit of a weak start there. The first couple of months, the market went down, and then it shot up. Now, look at the latter part of that year in 1980. Almost this exponential boost to the upside. You know when that was? That was right after the election, when Ronald Reagan, who, yes, did also use the term Make America Great Again, he was the first, didn't make the red hats or anything with it, and it wasn't the centerpiece of his campaign, but he did use that term. But right after the election happened in November and December of 1980, that's when the market shot up, because Wall Street, because much of the American populace, investors all looked at that and said, okay, we've got the new guy coming in. He's going to open up business. He's going to be more business friendly. He's going to be more market friendly. Wall Street loved the fact that Reagan was coming in, and it was going to go off to the races for the stock market, even when the stock market had already been doing well. Now let's go back to the chart, and you can see what happened here. A year and a half almost straight down for the S&P 500. That is a 33% almost slow death for the market from the beginning of 1981 into August of 1982. And then things finally turned around, and the rest is history. As we know, the market did very well after that. You know, if Reagan had to run for re-election in 82, it's reasonable to say that he would have lost, and probably lost big. But he still had a couple of more years, and by then everything turned around. Now, what happened back then? I don't need a big economic history lesson here, but basically things that were bubbling beneath the surface when Reagan first took office finally came to the surface and wreaked havoc on the economy. Inflation really did get its last big jump up. That caused Fed Chairman Paul Volcker to come in. Many of you know the story. He jacked up short-term interest rates dramatically, so the most in history at that time. Volcker, by the way, had been nominated under Jimmy Carter, and Reagan was not really happy with what Volcker was doing, but it did kill inflation, but it also killed the market. Now, is that what we're about to happen? Is that going to happen here in 2025? I don't think so. There are people who fear that inflation could start rearing its ugly head again, but my own personal opinion is I don't think that we're about to see a repeat of the late 70s and early 80s. Although we could start to see a little bit of a tick up. Here's the comparison I want to make, my friends. This is the important part. The stock market today, as I record this in early 2025, is historically, by any standard measure, on the overvalued side. Now, some can quibble it's extremely overvalued. Some can say it's a little overvalued. But by any standard measurement, the market is a little bit on the higher value side historically. How do you build on that? You have to have a scenario where everything is perfect. It's almost like when Reagan took over and the market had already been doing well for a couple of years, kept going higher and higher and higher. Everything had to be perfect, and it wasn't. And that's when you had the market go down. So without making a prediction in saying, well, I think the same thing is going to happen because 2024 was just like 1980 in so many ways, politically and with the market. Well, 81, well, it's going to turn out to be the same as in 25. Not saying that. So here's my point. There's a lot of expectation with Donald Trump coming back in from a business perspective. There's a lot of expectation that the financial markets are going to do very well. They've already been doing well. Everything is priced to perfection. So if we get just a bit of a hint of inflation, or if the Fed is forced to actually start raising rates again, or those geopolitical issues, actually something really blows up and gets worse, any of those things pop up, we could see a bit of a trend line go down, and that's the surprise. So, my friends, let me leave you with this. Please do not structure your portfolio based on your own personal politics. That is always a recipe in disaster and for disaster. I have made that point for many, many years. What you have to always do is structure your portfolio for your own little corner of the world. Where are you in life? What's your risk tolerance? What are your income needs? Are you retired? When do you think you're going to retire? All of these things. Do you need insurance? All that stuff goes in there. None of that, nowhere in the equation does it say, well, who's president? You know, what's happening in the valuation of the market right now? That doesn't mean a hill of beans. Bottom line, your homework here, your assignment is to make sure as we start 2025 that your portfolio is sound in any environment, even if we get a bear market that's close to like 81 and 82. And make sure that others in your circle, your friends, your family, are understanding this and not giving in to a lot of potential hype, just like a lot of investors were in 81 and they got burned by it. Pass this along to others, and by all means, please, this is my first Simon Says quick hit in the new studio. Can't wait for it. So make sure you subscribe, and also Make sure you also hit that little alarm bell because that's going to alert you when the next one comes out. That's it for now. We'll talk to you again next week.